Welcome to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast for authentic daters. I'm your host, Dave in Denver. Each week, we invite expert guests to come share their knowledge, tools, and tips to help you show up as your most authentic self. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the BBR podcast. We're in season 2. Can you believe it? Season 2 of the BBR podcast. And I'm so ecstatic to introduce our expert guest for the day. Klassen is from Calgary, you said?
Yes, Calgary, Alberta.
and how long have you been in Calgary?
I've been here since '84, originally from Vancouver, BC, but now I feel like a native of Calgary, so been here so long.
Good. And I know a little bit about you, but let's introduce you to the audience. How did you get started in your business?
Well, to give you a backstory, when I was younger, I was on welfare and addicted to drugs and cocaine and an alcoholic. And I actually married a coke dealer when I met him when I was 19 and ended up marrying him. And he was the man that brought me to Calgary. And I thought he was my knight in shining armor because he was taking me away from the drug world. I had no idea that I was marrying Calgary's #1 cocaine dealer at the time. And but I had the big house and the car and the jewelry, everything a girl could want, except for he was very abusive. And I was with him for about 7 years. It took me 2 years to eventually have the courage to leave him because he told me that if I ever left, he would have me killed. And thankfully, a few years after my divorce from him, I actually had a spiritual awakening, and that changed my life forever. Prior to that, my body was shutting down because I was leading such a toxic life. The doctors told me that if I didn't change my lifestyle by the time I was 30, that I would be dead. And my body was really falling apart because of the way I was living my life. I had scoliosis and chronic back pain and IBS, allergies, depression. I was suicidal. Everything. And then when the spiritual awakening occurred, what it was I actually tapped into a voice within myself that I'd never heard before. And it was a voice, I call her my brilliant self. And she was reminding me that love was all there was. In the spiritual awakening, I experienced love beyond human love. It was this divinity. And I cried for probably a week after that because I realized that I'd forgotten about my soul. I had read about my soul. I had heard, people talk about the soul, but I had no idea what people were talking about until I experienced it in that moment, that essence within me that was calling to me to step out of the lifestyle and the way of being that I was, which was really unauthentic, and to step into a more authentic way of living my life. And I'm so grateful that I said yes to that bigger part of who I am, because now, from what I've experienced, I started my company Imagine Seminars and Coaching, and I also have another component, which is women embracing brilliance, to really empowering women to remember that they deserve to be appreciated and adored and loved for who they are, and to really know how to find and attract love that is going to really empower them and support them, encourage them. And so it's been a long journey, I must say. However, I'm so grateful for every experience I've had because it's made me the woman I am today.
It sounds like it's been quite the journey. And I didn't expect you to say that. I'll be honest with you. It's not something that I may be able to relate to, but congratulations on standing firm and coming out of such a destructive and toxic lifestyle choice that you had. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Who is it that you find coming to you most often?
Women. I have a lot of women who are over the age of 40, so 40 plus, and I do have actually men coming to me now. I did have a workshop, in a relationship workshop many years ago that I started, and at that time, women were the ones that were really attending and diving into learning and discovering who they were. And then over the years, I found that women were dragging their husbands. And then it started to shift where the husbands were coming, or the boyfriends were coming, the partners were coming without their wives or without their girlfriends. And that is shifting to where men are showing up and their wives are not showing up. And now they're bringing their men friends. And so I'm finding that men are really wanting to learn how to have healthy relationships and how to dive into their emotions and awaken their own spirituality, which is so beautiful. I'm really impressed with where we're all going and the willingness to go there.
I found myself hesitant and hiding and resisting that opportunity to show up with other men for so many years. And now that I've realized in an awakened state that I need that in my life to be my healthiest and best and most authentic person, authentic self, now I'm looking for those 5 guys that are going to be there to lift me up and to strengthen me and to really champion what's going on in my world.
That is so empowering, and congratulations for you for doing the work that you're doing. You know, you're an example of what's possible, and I find that when men do say yes to being observed and being witnessed in their emotions, it's so empowering.
Oh, thank you so very much for saying that. I'm still learning every single day, every single week, every single time that I talk to a person like yourself. I discover something new about myself, and that's the fantastic process of this, the growth of the podcast, but also really just you can follow along on this journey that of self-awareness and personal growth that I've discovered in the last 6 months. It's been a lot of fun.
That's so great. You know, being authentic is the key to truly happy and healthy relationships. So when I say relationships, I'm referring to all relationships, whether it's with your partner, your spouse, with your kids, your parents, your friends, and however, you know, we can end up behaving in ways that are unauthentic, you know, as you mentioned, right? And to attempt to feel safe and secure in the relationship. And we all on some level have that fear that, you know, if someone really knows us, all parts of ourselves, that, you know, that we might not be loved for who we are, we might not be valued or seen for who we truly are. But true connection with another, right, and true connection with yourself comes from that willingness to allow yourself to be vulnerable. So well done.
Well, thank you very much. You were just about to talk about the men who are coming to you, but I want to ask you about a specific man in your life. Can you tell me a little bit about your dad and the relationship that you guys have?
Yes, it's amazing how when I was married and, you know, involved in that realm of living an authentic life, I discovered that I was really looking for love outside of myself and so desperate for love that's why I attracted the man that I did. And it was incredible back in those days. And I'll start with that and then I'll get into what I want to share with you. But my dad came to visit me and I was probably about 22, and he came to visit me with his new wife. At the time, he had divorced my mom, and she went to bed and my husband went to bed, and my dad sat at the kitchen table with me and he started crying. And I'd never really seen my dad cry. He wasn't really there for me when I was young. And he's sobbing at my kitchen table. And I said, "Dad, what's wrong?" And he said, "Karen, I'm so sorry. I was not there for you growing up. And I know that your mom was really mean to you. And I just really want your forgiveness." And in that moment, it was a breakthrough in our relationship. And from that point forward, we made a pact to contact each other every Sunday. My dad would call me every Sunday and we would speak for an hour. So over the years, as I began to awaken to my true self and, awaken to my own spirituality, my dad he lived in a small town, and he had this thirst for knowledge, and it didn't matter what I said, he was just listening, and he was discovering meditation through me and connecting with the angels through me. So because he had the willingness to journey with me through the years, my stepmom passed away, and my dad then was 79 years old, and he thought he was going to be alone for the rest of his life. He was really sad, and I could tell he was hurting inside. But the amazing thing is that my mom, my stepdad passed away, and my stepmom had passed away within the same year. So my brother and I, we said, we're going to take my dad and my mom on this Panama Canal cruise, and because we wanted to take them on this journey before they passed away. And on this cruise, my mom and my dad really got along. They had healed their relationship. And my mom had met these women on this cruise ship and introduced my dad to these women. And one of these women, her name was Grace. My dad was flirting with her, and I could tell that this woman was really interested in my dad. And so I said to her, I said, by the way, my dad is single. He's not married to my mom. And she lit up, and my dad ended up connecting with her. And the funny thing is from all the people on that ship, there was about 4,000 people from all over the world. She ended up living in Vancouver, which is where we were going for Christmas to be with my brother. And my dad went on a date with her and ended up marrying her. So he actually found his soulmate at the age of 79. And so now he's 83, and they've been traveling all over the world. So I share that story because it's so important for all of us to remember to never give up on love.
When it comes to love, oftentimes I hear that it's about timing. However, it sounded like your dad was doing a lot of work throughout that second marriage too, in order for him to come to you and open up and be vulnerable and say that he was sorry, and then rebuild this relationship with you. So it sounds as if he had been doing years of work before he met this soulmate at 79. Is that part of the story?
Absolutely it is. Yes. He was learning about love and what was required of him to step into being a remarkable man. And my dad was learning how to help out in the kitchen, because to me, being authentic is really about action, right? And it's about coming from that place of kindness and wanting to serve and wanting to be present. And he was learning these skills throughout the years and had the willingness to do so.
So maybe he learned how to show his love language as acts of service over time, or maybe just becoming more aware that another person feels love that way.
Absolutely. Yes. My dad was really shy, and he knew that, him living in a small town, he knew there was something more calling for him and a new possibility. And because he was living in a small town, we were already seeing him, because he loved to travel. He loved to travel, and so he wanted to see himself in that expansive place of learning more about who he is mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So he knew that in order for him to attract love, he needed to love himself. And so he started working on himself and meditating and reflecting and letting go of belief systems that didn't serve him anymore. And for a man who lived in a really small town to have that level of wanting to discover who he is really profound. And I'm saying, if I'm going to sound so cliche, but if he can do it, I think anybody can do it.
Agreed. I have a 70-year-old father right now, and he's very wise, and I will go out and I'll seek out his counsel as often as possible, maybe in business or occasionally in a relationship. I haven't been in a relationship for the past year, and it's been a true blessing for me to grow with myself and learn more about myself so that I can identify what it is exactly I'm looking for. And then when I find it, I can identify it, as opposed to just being oblivious and blind to the fact that it's sitting right in front of me.
Yeah.
And why I say that is a question came to mind. Why is it that when we do that hard work, we find love almost immediately after that?
Because our soul essence is calling for us to take the journey within, right? So being authentic is easy. It's being fake that's difficult. Like when we're hiding the truest parts of ourselves, that's when we experience more drama and trauma and tragedy in our life. So being real with where we're at and who we are brings about freedom and more ease and more grace into our lives. And when we're not embracing that authentic nature, we're hiding, we're lying about ourselves, we're lying to others, we're allowing ourselves to feel embarrassed or anything like that. And in the moment that we stop, pause, and go within and really admit to how we're feeling, to how we're being, it changes everything. I have what's called the divine mind conversation. So what I do is I have my clients go within, and we have that ego voice. We have two voices. We have the ego voice, which is our fearful self that tells us we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not going to attract the love of our life or our soulmate. But we also have that other voice, the voice of what I call our brilliant self. And that voice is that self within us that says, yes, you are loved, and anything is possible. And when we awaken to that possibility within ourselves to know that we can experience true love, that we can experience our soulmate and attract our soulmate with ease and grace, it's incredible what happens. And for me, many years ago, after I left my husband, a man actually knocked on my mom's door, and he said, I have this magazine, and I've opened this page in this magazine, and I see that there's this woman here. Her name's Klassen, and I want to meet her. And my mom looked at him and said, well, that's my daughter. He didn't even know that was my mom. And so he had traveled all the way across from Australia to come and find me here in Canada. And because I had put out the intention that the man that I was going to attract in my life was going to come to me. I was open to receiving him. And all I needed to do was just to be who I am, and he would do the work. And he showed up. And he was not my soulmate for life. I've heard you say on past podcasts, that people come into our life for a reason, a season, lifetime, right? So true. And I knew he was a man to come into my life to help me heal from my past relationships. But he showed up exactly when I needed him to be there.
And why did he pick your mom's door to knock on to find you?
He was living in Australia and he went to a medium, and she said, your soulmate is in Canada. And he didn't believe her at first, but as the universe works out, right, that everything, law of attraction, everything began to shut down around him in Australia. His business, he was losing, clients weren't showing up anymore. So he finally got the call. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to Canada. And he was guided. He went to Ontario first, and he had he was invited to a sacred ceremony with the, what is it, the native, what's it called? I can't remember the name of it, but they invited him for this sweat lodge ceremony, and it was really powerful, and they guided him to go west. And so he came west and showed up at my mom's building, an apartment building, and she was managing this apartment building, and she had slipped under all the doors this magazine that I was editing at the time. And so it was amazing how he just decided to open up this magazine, and as soon as he saw my photo, he felt this heart energy and knew I was the one.
Got it. You manifested, he manifested, and eventually the cosmos brought you together. And that's a pretty big concept for people to grasp onto early in their journey.
Yes.
You talked about the brilliant self, quieting the ego voice. Besides like daily affirmations, which I'm familiar with, maybe besides daily meditation, or you can include those too, what is it that encapsulates the steps or the process to get to your brilliant self?
Well, this is where we're actually allowing for our imagination to awaken, to know that we can actually go within ourselves and discover those hidden or fragmented parts of ourselves. So when we are young children, there may be a moment or a circumstance or situation where we feel unsafe. And those are those moments we hide our light, and we hide those innocent parts of ourselves. And so we take that journey then as adults to awaken those parts of ourselves that are fragmented, forgotten, ignored. And it's usually the fearful parts of ourselves, the shameful part of ourselves, the guilty part of ourselves. And all of those dark components are negative emotions that we are afraid to express. Those are those pieces that we need to begin to love and appreciate, because underneath all of our pain, underneath all of our anger, underneath all of our fear is our divine nature. And the more we allow ourselves to go within our darkness, is to the degree we experience our light. And it's a journey within. And right now, I think it's the most important journey that we can take for the evolution of humanity, is to find a way to go within and explore our own mind through meditation, through guided visualizations, through exactly the I am affirmations, to truly believing and awakening within us our own brilliance. Valuable. Connecting to our values, connecting to what's really important to us, connecting to what is it I really want in a relationship. And because when we know what we want, and then because when we know what we want, we're connecting to and attracting a person into our life, our partner into our life, that's going to mirror the exact healing that's going to be required. And so anyone that we're ever attracting in our life is a mirror of us, and the mirror of the healing that's going to be required for the next level of our consciousness, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. Before we clicked record, you and I were chatting and getting to know each other better, and I brought up that mirroring as it came true to me in this process of discovering inauthentic people were just a mirror of me and my lack of authenticity 6 to 8 months ago, maybe within the last year. Because even though I've been single and working on myself, I've still been dating to discover I felt like it was a need to do that in the self-discovery process. And here we are, completely understanding that those persons were not at fault. It wasn't them. It was me and my lack of authenticity that attracted them to me.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to figure that out. But it was because I was open to the possibility that love was out there. I was hopeful for it. I was faithful of it. And then I stumbled across these core values of mine that I try to avoid the word deal breaker or red flags, but these core values help me make decisions in building relationships moving forward. Do you find that your clients have a lot of that similar mindset when it comes to values?
Absolutely. When we know our values, when you know your top core values, then decision making is so much easier, because if something doesn't align with those values, you know to say no thank you and move on. and 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 then, because we have that true essence within ourselves of knowing our values, and at the same time, we're going to be attracting people who do not know their values, and they may not be authentic. They may not show up in the ways we want them to. And because of what you said in regards to knowing that everyone's a mirror and everyone's on their own level of processing their past and their pain from their past, we can then step into forgiveness a lot quicker, because we know that they're just mirroring aspects of our own subconscious mind. And when we can forgive, we can let go of them being wrong or us being wrong. And we can allow for those moments to be the most powerful in healing ourselves and being able to express, I'm sorry, can you forgive me? Just like my father did with me. Those words are so powerful when we are being mirrored back and we may be triggered. And when we're triggered, we may not show up in the way we want to. And that's when the unauthentic parts of ourselves, our fearful self, our ego mind can show up. And that's what really is being called to be healed right now.
So let me ask you a follow-up question to kind of pick out one thing that kind of resonates with me. There is parts of them are showing up because of parts of us, not our wholeness.
Yes.
And I've been seeing this kind of philosophy kind of out there. This doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. And what is this moment trying to teach me, as opposed to why is this happening to me?
Yes.
And the question there is, are those parts of those other people showing up inauthentically to mirror us inauthentically? What is it trying to teach us in that moment? Is it for us or is it for them?
Well, for example, I used to get so angry with my brother, and I was so angry with him because I would say to him, "You're not listening to me." And I would say this over and over, "You're not listening." And I would be blaming him and shaming him and pushing all of my pain because he would have triggered me. And I was pushing it all out and saying nasty things to him. And then there was a moment where I realized that it wasn't really about my brother not listening to me. It was really about him being the mirror of me not listening to my own inner brilliance. It was that part of me that I was not listening to. I was choosing to listen to what I call below the line, which is my ego self, my fearful self, and listening to that voice. And as I listened to that voice, this voice here never wants to connect or create love or a bond in relationships. It's only our inner brilliance that is going to allow us to connect. And I realized my brother was the biggest gift in in not listening to me, because he was a reflection of me not listening to my inner wisdom. And once I got that, it was no longer about my brother, and our conversations shifted, and I began to listen to my brother. It was never really about him not listening. It was about me listening, and that was the biggest gift that I ever gave myself.
Right. And I love that. I love that story because it really encapsulates that platonic relationships, familiar relationships, and then romantic relationships are not that different on the foundational level. If
Exactly.
one pattern is showing up in my romantic relationships, it's most likely going to show up in all my other relationships too.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I teach the evolution of relationships, the cycles, because all the cycles within the evolution of relationships that we're all moving through applies to every relationship, whether it's intimate, family, friendships, business partners. And you're absolutely right, because all of what's showing up in any of those relationships is mirroring what we need to heal and what is being asked to transform within ourselves right now.
I love it. Like it's just clicking in my brain of these moments in, say, like the last year of my life where I could have used that knowledge to both of our advantages when we're sitting across the table getting to know each other or on our 15th date. And I want to come back to forgiveness in that situation and having grace for the other person, because maybe I'm in their life to teach them something.
Yes, absolutely. And it's only going to it's only going to be effective if they're open to being, if they have a learning attitude and the willingness to learn from you. I find that in many relationships, especially intimate relationships, there's a lack of willingness to learn from our spouse, to learn from our partner, the one that we're with. Because you've probably been in a relationship where you're at a dinner party and your partner, your girlfriend is with you, and they say something that you told them many months ago, and now they're sharing it with everyone. And you're going, wait a minute, I told you about this, but they had resistance hearing it from you, but now they're open to sharing it with their friends. It happens so often where individuals are closed off to learning from their spouse or partner. And if we can move past that, I think that the most powerful life lessons come through our intimate relationships. And if we have the willingness to learn from our partners, we will shift and spiral up faster to having more authentic moments with each other.
I'm smiling and I'm kind of laughing to myself because I just had this conversation last night, and I'll get to it here in a second. But to find that person, or basically to screen out all those that aren't that person for you, that are going to help you spiral up, is a key component of this process in a romantic relationship, right?
Yes.
So if we're not, like, I know the holidays are coming up. This episode's going to air in a few weeks, but like family members around the holidays are like, why are you still single? You're so picky. And I don't want anybody to ever reflect on themselves and think of that as a bad thing. Because if they're more selective, then they're actually going to find a partner who challenges them, who plants the seeds in their mind and wants them to level up with them with no pressure and no timeline and no expectations. And would you agree to that selection process being very important when you're beginning the process of dating?
Absolutely. And at the same time, it's making sure that we're not too selective, because then we can be putting ourselves off and not allowing ourselves to grow in relationship. To me, being in a relationship is in an intimate relationship is the most powerful personal development program we could ever experience. And so it's important to make sure that one that you want to have in your life in the selection process, they've done the personal development work. Not all, but they've done quite a bit of personal development work. They have the same core values that you do, or similar core values that you do is really important. And to be open, because I find that so many people we can step into judgment, and it can be a spiritual judgment in the very beginning. And this can stop people from saying yes to their second date or third date, which I found with my clients in the past, where if they let go of that judgment process in the beginning and just allowed for them to see more and allow for a dating cycle to be experienced, then maybe on the sixth date or whatever, then they all of a sudden discover, hey, I really do enjoy this person. Oh my, they are incredible. And then all of a sudden the heart opens up, and they're moving forward. And so it's saying yes to the dating process, and at the same time trusting that the universe is bringing that exact person for your own growth in the next cycle of where you're going as well. Does that answer your question?
It does, absolutely. I'm taking notes because I'm a lifelong learner also, and I find the value in having that learning attitude that you were talking about earlier, especially in a relationship. And why I was chuckling earlier is because a friend of mine reached out and he asked to meet up. And this is a platonic relationship, so I think it's a good example to use here for planting seed in our community's mind that the growth is possible. And they can go as fast or as slow as they want to in order to reach whatever destination it is that they're looking for. And because of the podcast and because of the social media interaction that the content of the podcast helps me do, because I'm not a very good copywriter. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at marketing. But the podcast helps me share the content very easily. So he's been following along on this process, basically my journey, and he's coming up against a brick wall in his own personal life, and he was asking for my advice. And it's very, very hard for us men to be vulnerable with other men in a moment like that and actually say, I'm looking for help. And why I bring that up now is because in a romantic relationship, and there's one person doing all this personal growth and development, and they're leading the relationship, if they're doing it without pressure, there can be a beautiful kind of evolution of the relationship. Yeah. But if they're putting pressure on that person and they're like, you've got to rush, you've got to hustle, you've got to meet me on my level, which may be up here. And that person up there should be meeting the person down there on their level if they're that compatible person that they've been looking for, and they're willing to be patient and graceful and forgiving of the mistakes that are going to be made along the way.
Absolutely. And that's what an authentic relationship is, right?
Nailed it.
Exactly what it is.
After 7 months of interviewing experts, we've got it all broken down into one quick, okay, that was a long explanation of what I've learned, but
it's divinely perfect.
What would you add to it? What would you really take it to the next level for me, please?
Well, it's the authentic relationship is about being and knowing our true identity, our true nature, and being real with who we are, following our values, and having emotional integrity. I find that, there's so many people right now are inauthentic in regards to they're working late, but yet they're saying they're working late, but they're actually having an affair. Or, women are faking their orgasms. or the other end of the spectrum is saying I'm fine when we're not, right? So the more we're pretending and lying to not only others, but lying to ourselves, we're going to create the karma, right? The tragedy, the trauma, the drama that is going to stop us from moving forward. And so right now we're being called to be real, to be honest, to forgive. And we can actually have conversations that are extremely uncomfortable with our family, especially around the holidays, when we speak from a place of respect, right? When we're not making it about the other person, we're just saying, you know what? I may have not been there for you in the past. I am so sorry. I may not have supported you in what you're doing. But you know what? I love you and I want you to be happy. And if what you're doing makes you happy, that's all that matters to me. I love you and I just want you to be you.
That's a great place to be amongst those people that are closest to you and that we should be sharing
Yes.
with most often. I love that you brought up, I'm fine, I'm okay. That's the stoic mask that I wore for 20 years. And unfortunately, it was to the detriment of quite a few quality relationships or quality people that I found at the time over the course of 20 years. Finally broke down those walls and finally began to share my story and open up, and all the beauty and all the shit that's come with it. I couldn't be more grateful for this process and this time frame and this journey that I've been on in the last 2 years, I would say.
Oh, that's so great. You know, it can involve a lot of courage to express our truth, because sometimes our truth is going to be rejected, and knowing that other people might not support, you know, what you're saying or expressing. But to me, it's like that is the most empowering way to be. And eventually, the more we express truth in a kind and loving way, you know, and it's just the simplest of conversations of, I'm really hurting right now. I'm really just feeling a lot of emotional pain. Like what you just said right now to me triggered me. It's not really about you. It's just it's reminding me about a past situation, obviously, that I need to heal. And you know, just having real, authentic conversations. And eventually, as we have those conversations and we become comfortable with rejection or with others not really seeing who we are, but we are so grounded in our own truth that eventually we're going to only attract a higher vibrational energy of people in our life who really support us and see us and appreciate and encourage us on our journey.
Very well said. Thank you for summing it all up. Much, much better than I could.
Oh, you're doing amazing.
Well, if somebody wants to get a hold of you and your message resonates with them, what's the best way for them to reach out?
My website is karenklassen.ca. And yeah, and I have some great blog posts on that site as well. And there's the link to my own podcast, My Freedom Begins Here, and coaching. So it's a well-rounded site for men and women.
Right, and I'll be sure to spell that out in the show notes before, because it's with 2 S's and 2 Ks.
Thank you.
I really want to respect your time and appreciate you jumping on the BBR podcast today. If there's one final piece of advice you'd leave us with today that we didn't touch on, or that we did touch on that you'd like to expand on, what would that be?
Never give up on love.
Very honest, very succinct, and very true. I can be a testament of that because I've asked for love to be present in my life. I found all different versions of it. platonic love, intimate love, familiar love. All of the above has kind of gravitated towards me in the last year or so, and I couldn't be happier with the results of all the hard work that it's taken to get here.
That's fantastic. And I'm just so honored to be here. So thank you very much for having me on your show.
It's my pleasure. What do you say in the next 6 to 12 months we connect again in a live event or on the podcast, or maybe a Facebook Live sometime, and we'll share a little bit more of the knowledge that you've got?
That'd be great. I'm going to be speaking at the Radical Love Summit, so I'll be seeing you there.
You'll be in Denver?
Yes.
Great. I'm not asked to speak at this one, but we are trying to connect where maybe I have like a satellite location of the podcast and do quick 10-minute bits with people in person there.
Yes, that's fantastic.
Are you in?
I'm in.
Okay, guys. If you're in the Denver area in April, this is the 27th, I believe, jump on over to the Radical Love Summit and seek out if this is the right fit for you guys to come to a live event in Denver. So thank you so very much, Karen, for your time today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.